Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tips, tools, and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. Today I have guest Lindsay Leigh. Lindsay is a life coach, intuitive reader, channel, and energy healer who went from being a burned out overachiever in corporate America to creating a spiritual coaching and consulting business. Lindsay now uses her transformational story from fearing her own intuitive abilities to embodying them. She guides, mentors, and advises others on how to embrace their abilities too, so they can become the next level version of self. Welcome, Lindsay. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
So we're going to have fun today in this show because we're going to talk about intuitive abilities, tuning back in after tuning out as a child. And I know that this topic may resonate with a lot of my listeners, especially them being empathic, right? And so I know it definitely does with me. I was the kid who spoke with animals. I could hear animals, I could talk to animals, and I had imaginary friends. And then I'd go to school and I would share my stories, and then I would get picked on terribly. And so I kind of stopped doing that because I felt different and I appeared a little weird to my peers. And so it wasn't until I started working with the deceased that my abilities began to ramp up in my late 20s. And so, Lindsay, you were that terrified child with a lot of unique abilities that you did not understand as well. And so I wanted to start off with you sharing your story because I do feel that many people may relate to having these unique abilities as children, but feeling scared and shutting them off. So what did your childhood look like when you had access to these abilities?
Yeah. Oh, man. I think back to those days and it feels so far away and yet like it was just yesterday sometimes. When I think about how I opened up to my intuitive abilities as a child, I didn't so much consciously open up to them. And I think you'll agree with this too, that they were just with you always. And they were just natural. Yeah, they're just naturally a part of who you are. And it just felt, because it was natural to you, you almost felt as if it must be natural to other people. And so I loved when you were talking about how you couldn't share them because you realized that people would look at you differently. And I felt the same way. And so it became this really like quiet internal journey that I didn't speak about very often because you realize at a very young age that maybe it's not safe to do that. So let me look. So when I think back to my childhood, I, could play with electromagnetic frequencies. Like one of the things I used to do when I was a kid is I could move the needle on a radio. Now, not physically, you wouldn't like physically see it move, but you would hear the radio station change. I could move it back and forth.
Little telekinesis.
I could
a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. And then, make it, like scratchier sounding or more clear. And I remember thinking, am I doing this? It was just a way to start like playing with the energy. And I was like, what's happening? This is crazy. I also used to hear voices, but for me, at least from what I remember, I have to say, I do think I've probably shut out some of the experiences that I have had, but I could hear voices that sounded like I was in a banquet room or with like a large dinner party. And I remember in my mind, I could turn the volume up and down like a dial in my head.
Gosh, I wish I would have learned that as a kid because I remember I just went home recently and one of my third grade friends said to me, Tanya, I always remembered you putting your hands over your ears saying, it's too loud. It's too loud. And she goes, and I could never hear anything. So I wish I had known that ability. I do now. I know now, but as a child, I didn't know how to turn it up or down.
Yeah. And it was so weird because like I didn't know what they were saying. I was just like
you were hearing all of these dimensions, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, what dinner party are they at? Like, what's happening here? What am I tuning into? Let me see. What else?
Now sometimes I'll just be hanging out in my room and I hear an angelic music and I know it's not my neighbors playing angelic music. And I'm like, what am I hearing?
Yeah, I could never get it back. That's why and I even had forgotten about it until one day several years ago, I was in meditation and I remember the memory sort of like came back in. I was like, how did I forget all of this? Like, this is crazy. But yeah, I had sort of like, uh, pushed it away in the back of my mind until one day it came forward again. And I was like, oh yeah, that used to happen all the time. I can't believe I forgot.
Yeah.
But
So how did
yeah,
you, okay, so you had these abilities as a child, and then did something make you shut them off, or did you just naturally shut them off?
yeah, that it it was really rooted in the fear of what I could see. So on top of hearing things, I could see things, and this mostly showed up at night. And it's really where a lot of my fear around these abilities came from when I was a child, never really knowing like what I would see or when it would show up. And on top of that, I'm sure many of you all can relate about having pretty intense nightmares as a child. And so the nighttime for me was just nothing but fear. And it was like every night I had to go back into that space again. And so through that time, there's really like no one there to help or guide you through it. And like I said, I went through this mostly pretty quietly and feeling very alone in this journey. But yeah, eventually it just all became too much. And when I was around like maybe 11, I had heard somewhere, I'm a latchkey kid, child of Oprah, probably heard it on Oprah or something. um, but I had heard somewhere that you can say you don't want it or you can turn it off. And so I remember sitting on my bed with my knees, or like my arms wrapped around my knees, and just speaking to some invisible force that I didn't want this anymore and I wanted it to turn off, and it did within like by the next day. And so that's when everything stopped, and everything kind of went away until about 2017, and then I had kind of an unexpected spiritual awakening.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that we have the ability to shut it off. This happened to me in my late 20s when I took a job working in organ donation, and I was around a lot of death and loss and grieving families. And I would get into the hospitals and I would start seeing shadow people. I would see walk-ins, like people being resuscitated. I would see spirits leaving and spirits entering. I would see the deceased donors that I was working with. I could see their essence. And honestly, it started to freak me out because I was already highly stressed out in that job to begin with. And then to have this extra added on, extra sensory, so to speak, ability, I just didn't want anything to do with it. And I remember going home and writing down, I don't want to see any more shadow beings. I don't want to see any more apparitions. I don't want to be woken up at 3 a.m. with something standing there at the end of my bed. I don't want this communication. And I put it in an envelope and I shoved it in my desk. And I still don't know where that envelope is. I've moved a few times and I couldn't find that envelope. So I have been actually working now to open those abilities back up again, because I know at that time I wasn't prepared for it. Kind of like when we're children, we aren't really prepared, to
Yeah.
see all of this happening. And oftentimes it does happen at nighttime. Unfortunately, that was my time, is at 3 or 4 in the morning, I'd be woken up with messages from a deceased donor that I just worked on. And I'm like, I barely am getting enough sleep as it is. I don't need to be woken up at 4 a.m. And so, you know, now, Lindsay, that you see your past, you see where you were as a child and those abilities. And now you said in 2017, you were kind of, the volume was turned up again. What experience did you have in 2017? Because I think a lot of people can relate to this as well, that if they shut those abilities off as a child, many people are beginning to awaken to these abilities again and remembering that, hey, we are multidimensional beings and we have these amazing gifts and abilities. So can you share a little bit about what happened to you in 2017?
Yeah, it's actually starts out as a really funny story. There was a psychic medium, several of my friends, I lived in Austin at the time, and several of my friends had recommended this woman. And I remember looking at her website and I was like, oh, I'll get a session with her. And when went to go click to buy a session, I was like, oh my goodness, she is so expensive. I don't know. I don't know if I can afford her. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to read her book and I'm going to see if I like her energy, and then maybe I will buy it. It was that book that basically led to my spiritual awakening and put me on this journey. So it's kind of like a funny joke from the universe of me being like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna see if I'm gonna do like get a session with her. And then it was like the scales fell from my eyes and everything opened up, and like I was like everything I'd felt and believed but never said out loud was in this book, and I couldn't put it down. I was blown away. And then I would say by the next month, I started seeing things again, and I started hearing things again, and I started to like feel just new. It was so interesting. It almost just felt like reconnecting with this self I had lost, that I didn't even remember that I had lost. And yeah, it's just, I'm still thinking about all the stuff. And it happened like we were talking about at night, where it's like all of a sudden I'm seeing things standing next to my bed. The last straw, when I finally decided to be more empowered and take control of the situation, was when I woke up to 4 men in biblical clothing standing at the end of my bed. And I freaked out and screamed. I remember like jumping across to my nightstand to turn my lamp on, and I ran into my bathroom and I started crying, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Are these good? Are these bad? I don't even know what is happening. Like, I was freaking out. So that's when I went and I hired my first mentor. And over the next couple of years, I started working with mentors because I wanted to not only understand like what in the world that was, but also I wanted to understand myself. I wanted to step forward from a place of empowerment. Like, I'm an adult now. I'm not a kid. And I can choose to learn these gifts and understand myself in a much deeper and authentic way. And so that really was the beginning of this journey I've been on, and understanding who I really am. And, you know, I'm sure will continue to unfold through the rest of my life.
Of course. And I do feel like it's like once you shut off one, the other ones get stronger. It's like, you know, you see people who are blind and they're really tuned into their hearing and their touch. And, you know, I had a similar story to you when after I wrote that letter and crammed it in my desk, it was like my higher self was like, oh, no. You don't want to see us, but you're going to hear us. So one night at 3 a.m, I had just bought a new sound bar for my television. Okay. I couldn't hear well through the TV. So I bought a big sound bar. Well, one night that sound bar went off with angelic music. It sounded like I was in the middle of a church chorus with an organ. And I jumped straight out of bed and I yelled. I was like, don't you dare wake me up like that again. It was like, and I could feel this giggle with them, as I say, my higher self, my guidance team. But it was like, you know, we aren't going to show up anymore at the end of your bed, but we're definitely going to turn the sound bar on. So at that point, that was a turning point for me, because I knew I couldn't run from my abilities. I could not literally shut them off as much as I wanted to, because what was happening is it was going to make my other one stronger. And what it did is it made my hearing stronger and my my feeling stronger. So, you know, yes, I know I wasn't seeing them, you know, clairvoyantly, but I was definitely seeing through dimensions. I was seeing different frequencies. I was feeling different frequencies, and I was hearing them too. So, you know, so Lindsay, you work with a variety of people, right? So you mentor people, you advise people on this. And so what are some abilities that you've picked up on from other people that you've worked with that might be cool to talk about?
Oh, I love this question. So other abilities I've seen. So actually the other day I was working with a client. So I'm based in Houston, and I have a couple of clients that, you know, live in Houston. And so I was working with helping her to understand how to manage her energy. A lot of the things that I think we learn when we work with energy healing, whatever, is a lot of times we want to push and we want to move. We want to like control the energy, but what we really need to do in order to quote unquote control is to receive and let it flow and guide. So it's less about the controlling and the guiding. So I was working with her to understand how her energy works and how it flows. And I was showing, so I have my hands up where we were practicing with hands, and I was showing her how to receive, how to flow, because she literally shocked the bejesus out of me when I was tapping in, because I was like, okay, show me what you do. I want to understand. And then I screamed in the middle of this like coffee shop because she shocked me so bad, and she goes, "Are you okay?" And that's
Well,
been
what it
so
did is
fun.
it created an electrical circuit between you and her. That's what it did.
I know. So I was like, okay, let me now. So then I like worked with her to help her not, because she was actually like shocking other people too. And she's like, I don't want to do this. I want to understand how to like work with this, because I was like, you probably have some healing ability here, specifically with this type of this power that you physically possess. And she's just like, I've had it for so long. It's the thing I've known the most. And so I want to be able to work with it better. And it was so fun because I got to show her what it looks like. How do I say this? What other people's energy signatures kind of work with. So I shared mine with her, and she started crying. And I was like, I said, what's going on? She goes, oh my gosh, the way that you work with energy is so different. And I shared that because, and Tanya, you just said it exactly. Like our clairs, the way that our intuition communicates with us is so different for everyone. And that was the most just like blatant example of how different, but how powerful each of us are using our own unique gifts. And how we don't have to try and put ourselves in a box or in a mold to be like someone else, because our gifts are just as beautiful. So that was a fun one to work with. I'm trying to think, like, there's so many different ways too that people interpret. So sometimes I work with people to help them like translate their intuitive messages, or like become an intuitive or psychic reader. I'll everybody's a little different, but sometimes people want to learn that. And the way that they translate information and how they see it or how they channel it is very different from the way that I do. I started channeling by writing. And so for me, it's very natural to write. And for some people, like, I'll write word for word. Like, I will get a message and I write word for word. I may see stuff in my third eye. But some people, they don't get any words.
It comes out my mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I can talk it too. It just took me a while because I was so scared. Again, I understand the fear. But they see things like they don't have like a word for word translation. They have like, okay, I'm seeing like this mountain over the trees and I'm feeling this, and the message that's coming through to me with this visualization is blah, 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 blah. And it's so different from maybe how I would have translated it, but the messages were so similar.
Yeah.
And that's what's so neat. I find that we all can interpret a little differently and still get similar messages.
I agree. And, I on the weekends, I talk freely about this. I have a Sasquatch research team that we go out and do fun stuff on the weekends. And I will hear things first. And some of my other teammates, they'll have different experiences. Like one will see and one will feel. And so it's almost like we're one big human body together when we go out on these little research missions, and we have these amazing experiences because we're kind of looking back and forth at each other. Like, do you feel anything? No, I don't hear anything. Do you see anything? No. And then boom, we have this massive connection where we all experience something at the same time. So it's just a very powerful validation of how when we are in tune with nature, how quickly those intuitive abilities will enhance, right? I mean, that's probably been one thing. I moved back in 2018 or 2019, I moved from Florida to the Pacific Northwest. And you can see, this is what it looks like, in the background. And so I'm in nature all the time, and immediately my intuitive abilities just really amped up. And I do feel that, we have that capability to do that. And so, Lindsay, we talked about fearing channeling, fearing what we're seeing, as children, fearing all these different things. Why do you think that we fear our natural organic abilities?
I think that we are really working our way out of hundreds, maybe thousands of years of fear-based programming around our gifts, our abilities. Really, it's couched under this fear of the unknown, which so many of us experience. Even I, of course, but this fear of like what we might or might not be able to control, or what other people might not be able to control in others, right? And I think it goes back to where a lot of us have had to work ourselves out of this idea of keeping our gifts hidden or not acknowledge them so that we can just fit in and be like everyone else. So many of my clients have come to, to be initially really worried. Like, it's very common for somebody who really wants to work on their gifts to be a little scared of it, because
especially seeing things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're like, am I going to be able to control my gifts? I don't even know how to work with them. Or they're going to, as we see in like, movies, like, what if I open a portal that I bring all these bad things in, which look, like, we live in a world of contrast.
Exactly.
You
can open up a portal and bring in good or bring in bad. It's really based on frequency. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I try to encourage, my clients and everybody that I work with, that the thing is, everything comes from source, from light, even the darkness. They originate from source. Your gifts are at their core love and goodness. And when you can approach the exploration of your gifts and your abilities from a heart-centered curiosity, and I will say, work with someone that you trust to support you. I'm a very big fan of not doing it alone and having a mentor. There's really nothing to fear. So I love thinking about it from that place of, heart-centered curiosity.
Absolutely. And understanding that we have the power to turn it up or down based off of our will. We really do. And it may take a little bit. If you're really turned on, it may take a little bit to turn it down. You may have to learn that skill. But like I said, I wrote them down on a piece of paper, put them in. I had a lot of energy and intention behind that, and it worked. Within the next day, I wasn't experiencing that. And so I want to talk a little bit, Lindsay, about how doing inner work is connected to our intuition, because many of us, we hear that you got to do the inner work. And so, first off, what is inner work, and how does doing the inner work actually enhance our intuition?
To me, inner work is really about coming into awareness of the aspects of yourself that need healing in order for you to grow and evolve into this higher self, this higher version of self that you're looking to go towards. And I really believe that, how do I say this? The things that happen when you have a spiritual awakening, or just simply a desire to know and understand your intuitive gifts, is that you will be asked to clear the shadow away first. And this is part of that inner work. The journey to understand your spiritual and intuitive gifts requires you to do the inner work so that you can really heal parts of yourself that you've denied, hidden away deep inside your subconscious. And as you clear these hidden or heavier aspects through that inner work, the more expanded and high frequency gifts can now shine through. Yes. So we've got to clear out the density in order to bring in those like higher frequency gifts and abilities.
Yeah. And it's the way I explain it is, as an analogy for any of you who've done scuba diving before, like the further you go down, it gets heavier, less, it's harder to move, and it's darker, so you're going 90, 100 feet down. You're going to be kind of fearful a little bit because you can't see in front of you. It's a little murky, it's a little dark. But as you begin to raise in frequency, raise in vibration to say 40 or 50 feet, it gets beautiful. And you can see the vibrant colors of the fish, and you can see the plant life, and you can really see. And then as you move up to the snorkeling, you can really see. So I'm a firm believer in order for us to raise our vibration or expand our frequency, we've got to let go of the things that are anchoring us down, that are creating density in our lives. And if you are amping up your spiritual abilities and you haven't done the inner work, you are going to naturally be vibrating with other energies that are of that same frequency. So that's where the fear can come in. So you're like, oh man, I opened up my third eye and now I'm seeing demonic entities. I don't know. That's just an example. Well, where's your frequency at? Are you in a negative mindset? Are you, holding on to a lot of trauma? Are you holding on to a lot of heavy emotions? As you begin to move through that inner work and releasing that, you will begin to naturally now be in a different frequency, a different vibration, where you will magnetize and align with higher frequency energies around you, because it's all data, it's all information. That's really what it is, right? And so as we begin to kind of shed those layers of ourselves that have been holding us in those lower dimensional energies, or anchoring us into the third dimension, in that lower third dimension, we begin to be able to ascend into those higher frequencies. And so I've got an example of this. Actually, I had recently, so there's a location here not too far from me. It's a national park, and there's a lot of stories about it being haunted. So I'm all about this. I love it. It's fun because it gives me an opportunity to fine tune my abilities a little bit. So I had a friend who was a Marine, and I asked her to go with me. She's very clairvoyant. And she's the one, as the child, very similar to you, Lindsay, where she was seeing things and it terrified her. And so she shut it off. Well, I took her with me and we went to this place called the Brig. Now, I didn't realize that the word Brig actually meant prison or confinement. I didn't realize that's what that
Neither.
meant. Now, I was all innocent going into that. Well, I sort of wasn't innocent because I knew it was haunted, but I didn't really share it all with her. So I was just curious to see what she picked up on. And she loved doing this stuff. It's not like I was, leading the blind here. She loved doing this stuff. So as we're pulling into this location, there was a statue of a soldier's head that I wanted to take her over to see, because I wanted to see what energy she would pick up. Well, the moment we pulled in, she pointed in that direction, and I hadn't even shared it with her. And she said, I don't want to go over there. And I thought, oh boy, what do you see? She goes, I see dark energies just crawling around that thing. And so, of course, I'm like, let's get out of the car and walk over there, because I don't see them, but I want to go feel what it is. And I want to see if I can hear that, because I knew I could feel denser energies there. I just couldn't see it. Well, I could see her kind of behind me. I'm walking right in, like, and I'm like, oh gosh, it does feel heavy here. I wasn't hearing anything, but I could feel the density. She was backing up. She was like, oh, no, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there. So we leave that little area, and then we go over to the actual Brig area, and it was open. It's usually not open. It has a museum on the inside. So I was kind of excited because I wanted to walk around and see what I could feel. She wouldn't even walk in the door. She was getting ill. She was getting sick. And she's like, I want to get out of here. I want to leave. So I said, okay, just go sit in the car and just give me a minute. I just want to bounce around this place. Well, I could definitely feel that heavier energy, but I wasn't getting sick. I wasn't feeling the illness. So we get in the car, and as we start to leave, she starts to lighten up a little bit. Like she could say, and she said to me, I don't ever want to go back there again. Well, I've been doing a lot of inner work and she has not, so there was obviously a very drastic difference between the way I was feeling the energy. Now, she was seeing it and she was feeling it. She was doing a little bit of both, where I was able to walk into that denser energy, holding a higher frequency. I was still receiving the data and the information, but it wasn't overtaking my body like it was her. She almost wanted to throw up. She was getting very nauseous. But as we began to pull away, now this is a park I go to often. So obviously I'm not really, I can sense and I can hear and I can feel and I can have all this data coming to me, but it's not like a Velcro, right? It's not sticking to me because I'm holding my frequency. And I think as we begin to learn our intuitive abilities, part of mastering is learning to hold our frequency, right? And as we raise it a little more, hold it, raise it a little more, not drop it, right? Not drop it where you're like, oh, I feel heavy. I'm being inundated by all the energies around me. It's really like, no, this is my frequency. And I am commanding that, not, that this is the beautiful light that's shining out from me. And so I think, as we begin to learn this inner work and that link between our intuition, we can walk into the depths of the dark and the dense energy, and we can shine really bright. Yeah.
Hell yeah. That was so good. I'm like, yes. And it's so funny because that's exactly like you are such a great storyteller and way that you paint a picture of how that looks, because that is exactly what I think of when I think about my own journey. And I'm sure you as well, where it's like, how did I go from feeling everything to being able to walk into a space and nothing messes with me? And it is part of that inner work. You get to a point where you are so embodied and empowered in who you are and your beingness that nothing can mess with you.
Yeah.
And it like, because what happens is, oh, I'm so glad we're having this conversation, is people who are naturally very high frequency are the shiny things. And
Yes.
I had wondered this for a long time. Why are some people so affected, like your friend is, and then some people are not? Are their abilities just not as strong? What's happening? You know, I'm sitting over here trying to like research, assess all this stuff. And the point you made is so beautiful, because that's exactly what happens is you and I are shiny AF people, but I am not as affected by things as some of my other friends are, because they have not done the work and
Yeah.
they have
And
not
they're not
gotten
holding on to the
to,
trauma.
yes,
Mhm.
yes. And they kick, because that's why you and I do so much work with hypnosis and healing in the subconscious, because that's where a lot of that trauma lays or sits and just hangs out on repeat. And you can't deny, like, energy never lies. And so, and so it stays in your energy field until you do the inner work to clear it and heal it. And the more you continue to get rid of these denser programs, these denser belief systems, do that inner work, and your frequency is no longer carrying those anymore, you start to come into awareness of your power.
Yes.
And that in itself is like this shield that comes up. It doesn't mean we don't have bad days and that things don't, happen to us, but it means that, because, like, look, I am, part of my journey is like, I can see demons, I can see demonic entities. They used to mess around with me at night all the time. And it got to the point where I remember I went to work with a mentor. It's funny, I've never shared that publicly before. I just share it
Well, I think a
privately
lot
usually.
of children do, because they're, especially empaths, they are transmuting a lot of the energy within their household as well, which is anchoring them into those denser frequencies too.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Yes. That could not be more true now that you say that. I love the way you word things. It's like, so you're such a truth teller. It's beautiful. Um, but yeah, I mean, and it was a point where I went to a mentor of mine and I was like, look, I want to know how to get rid of these. I want to know how to, like, remove entities, blah, 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 all this stuff. And she's like, okay, I'll teach you. And then I told her, I was like, but she goes, some people can't even see this stuff. And it's like that story you were just
True.
telling. It's
Like
like,
I don't see them, but I can feel it. I can feel the density, but it doesn't attach to me like it used to, because I'm not
yes.
a magnet to the trauma anymore. Those energies, like say you walk into the brig, right? All this sadness and suffering and sorrow and turmoil. I'm not vibing at that energy anymore, because I'm not a magnet to the trauma. Now I could see
Yes.
where my friend was a magnet to that trauma. And the moment we left, you could see that lifting off of her. It was like the magnet was beginning to separate or repel,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's the law of attraction, but I started to see that shift when I learned initially how to do this. I still was clearing myself. I clear myself. And then over time, as I really shifted into this new state of being, this new frequency, this new timeline, I'm even in a new timeline. I wasn't even supposed to be in. I found out last month that I shifted into like a new timeline that shifted
good.
everything. Anyways,
Quantum
so
leap.
fun. I know. But I noticed now that, yeah, I don't interact with them. They're not even in it's so interesting how everything just shifts, but it's all this like law of attraction, everything is energy,
It
and
is.
the energy never lies. So mic drop, period. That's, energy never lies.
It doesn't. And if you're vibing in an energy of fear, you're going to magnetize other fearful energies around you. And your inner being, your inner frequency is going to project itself out into your external reality. So if you're vibing at fear, you're going to see things that bring more fear into your life. But if you're vibing at love, you're going to see things that are bringing more love into your
Yes.
external reality. And that goes for the paranormal as well, because it's all just a sine wave. That's really what it is. You're ebbing
Yeah.
and flowing. And like you said, one day I could be vibing at love and having a great day. And then for some reason, something comes up the next day and I'm vibing at fear. And I'm like, what is happening? But that's when consciousness comes in and awareness to look inside and say, why am I vibing at fear? What is coming up? What do I need to heal inside of me to release this energy so I'm not magnetizing it in my external reality?
Totally. And one of the things I was thinking of while you were just saying that is I get a lot of questions around like, well, I protect my field, I do this protection space and it's not working. And I'll tell you why, because you created it from a place of fear.
Yes.
You chose
Very
to protect.
true. It's your vibe. You literally have created a bubble of fear around you versus embodying your light.
Yes.
Your light. And I call it the Care Bear stare. You Care Bear stare that out, right? Through your heart. You cheer bear it, man.
I love that.
Versus, because I'm like that too. I don't use protection measures anymore. I just embody my light. I call my power in and I shine like the sun and I just blast that. I don't have this. There was a time when I was like, oh, I need my bubble of protection before I walk in. Oh, I'm scared. But 100%, Lindsay, you're on key with that because you've created a bubble of fear around you and you're just going to, they may bounce off, but they're still going to be there,
Yeah.
Bubble goes down,
Yeah, I know. And I love that. That's like, because it's one of the first things we get taught in this world, is like how to protect your energy and how to protect. And I'm like, wait, but before you protect, how are you feeling? A lot of us, like because I think of it's like, where are you creating from? Are you creating this protection because you're scared? Same thing, like in the middle of the night, maybe you wake up and you're somebody too who can see things and you know that something is in the corner of your room. And now you're freaked out and you're like, I got to protect myself. And then you put a fear of protection. You're like, no, this isn't making it better. It's like, I know, because you're scared. So I always tell my spiritual friends when that happens, I was like, just call me or text me. I'm not there. Or like, we'll tell each other, like I can help you, like I'll create something for you because I'm not scared. And maybe we can, we have these like fun woo text threads sometimes that we talk about those things.
Yeah. And really, it's just commanding it. Everything started with the word, right? So I command my power back into my body now, and I command you to leave. And you say that with the most conviction that you have. I have had to do that. I did it in a hotel room once. I was staying in a hotel room and something jumped on. I woke up in the night and I was like, and I said, I command you. Like, my friend was like, what is happening right now? And I was like, Moses parting the seas. And it was like this spark of energy. And then I laughed because it was so funny because I went from this, whoa, what is on me, to this place of fear, to this place of massive confidence and commandment, to this place of laughing and hilarious because I just woke straight up out of my bed and was just getting things. But I tell you what, after that did not happen. That did not happen. They were like, oh, I'm not going to mess with her in that room. We're going to go to the next room. So we have the power to do that. We just have to do it with conviction. And we need to understand that we have the power to command our own energy. And the moment you do that, your aura gets stronger, right? I call it the Swiss cheese aura.
Totally.
We have these holes in our aura, and that's when these energies can kind of worm their way in. But when you really, visualize yourself expanding your Merkaba, your aura, your light body, then nothing is going to come towards you. This happened to me when I worked in the hospital. When I started learning about energy, I would do little projects or little research things to see if my energy was working. And I would have certain doctors that would come up to me all the time that were very negative Nancy's, so to speak, and just always negative. And as I began to expand my light body and my Merkaba, they would see me in the hallway and turn around and run the other way. So I knew that my light body was that big. I was like, wow, my light body expands like all the way down the hallway. Like that's pretty intense. And so, but I was doing a lot of energy Qigong. I was doing a lot of Donna Eden's energy routines. I was doing a lot of different things to expand at that time. which was really
I
fun.
love that.
But I was seeing it witnessed in my external reality.
That is so cool. I know. See, I don't see as much during the daytime, like entities and stuff. It's more at night when, like, I'm half awake or whatever, or I don't know. I'd always be like, why at night? Like, why is everybody so intense at night? I guess it's because, you're asleep. And so it's easier to approach you when you're not, fully conscious to command
Yeah,
the
and
space.
I can kind of explain that a little bit, because when you fall asleep, you go into the astral realm. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's the lower astral and then the upper astral, that fourth dimension. And so when you fall asleep, if you're having in your third dimension, if you're having certain experiences, maybe you fall asleep stressed out, or you watch a scary show and then you fall asleep, you are going to carry that into your dream state. So you're going to carry that into the astral realm. So there's a fine line there between, am I seeing this in my third dimension, or am I seeing it in the fourth, And so as you begin what we talked about earlier, doing that inner work, making sure that every night before you go to bed, you have good, positive thoughts in your mind, that you do something that raises your frequency, because you're carrying that through the fourth dimension as you're going into the sleep state. And then you will wake up with that same frequency. Okay. So it's very important that, we do things prior to bed, prior to sleeping, that are going to put us into those higher vibrational states.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think so many of us don't think about what our nighttime routine is, or our
Yes,
nighttime energetic routine. We always think about the morning and starting our morning, but really nighttime is where I feel like so much important work also needs to happen.
I agree. And so, Lindsay, this has been such a fun show. And is there anything else? I want you to talk a little bit about the services that you provide, and how people can connect with you.
Yeah. So I mentioned a little earlier, but the majority of my business is comprised of, that one-on-one client work where we work for 3 to 6 months together. I offer this all-inclusive program that blends coaching, intuition, spiritual development, regression hypnosis, even business support. It's really tailored around the client's goals, and then we go from there. But I also offer single sessions. I do psychic readings, and then I also do BQH regression hypnosis sessions. So those are the main areas that I work in. And I usually will try to offer some workshops, and I do free energy forecasts each month. So those would be the main services I provide.
And so I found you actually through Podmatch, but I also found you on Instagram. So where can people find you?
Yeah, that's right. I'm mostly active on Instagram. My my Instagram handle is very long. It's Lindsay Leigh Official. And will my info be in the show notes? Can we
Yes, it
add it? Because
will.
it's perfect. Okay, so check out the spelling and the show notes. And then you can also explore my work and book sessions by going to my website, which is just lindsay-lee.com. So stop by and say hi, DM me if you have questions. I'd love to support you any way I can.
Yeah, and that's so fun. And so, Lindsay, is there anything before we close? Is there anything that you think we didn't touch on that maybe we need to talk about?
Oh gosh, no, I had so much fun today. I could talk to you for hours and
Kind
go
of already
even
have been
deeper.
before the show. We're talking for like 30 minutes.
I just, oh my gosh, I'm even talking. I'm so sorry. No, this has been so fun. Thank you for sharing this space with me, and just love the conversation we had today. And I hope everybody knows that, everyone is different and unique, and your journey is special and unique, and your soul chose it before you ever incarnated here.
Yeah, and you're not alone. You are not alone
Yeah.
going through this awakening process. And so, Lindsay, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being candid and transparent and sharing, the fears that you had as a child and how you have embodied your intuitive abilities. And thank you for working with others on this, because I think we need to step into our divinity. We need to step into our true power. And people like you and I, we kind of went through the trenches, and now we're out there sharing our unique experiences with the world. So thank you for coming on the show today. It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much.
You deserve to navigate your life in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.theexistentialempath.com.